And thank you, Matthew. So much of what you said rang bells and resonated very much with what I'm going to say as well, I think. So the Iona Community, for those of you who may not have heard of it at all or know very much about it, is what we call a dispersed ecumenical Christian community. And our strapline is: inspired by our faith, we pursue justice and peace in and through community. And I think for me that that pretty much sums up, what we're about. It all started in the late 1930s when a Church of Scotland minister who was living and working in Govan in Glasgow realised that there was a disconnect between the folk who went to church and the folk who lived locally. And having himself also served in the First World War, and he himself came from what I call a high status family, he realized that, and probably the First World War was very much the first time he had had an opportunity to get to know other men from a very different background. And so when he started working as a minister in Glasgow, that was something he really wanted to do something about, to see how he could create a different kind of community and bring people together who lived very different lives. And he started doing that in Govan. But his light bulb moment happened when he realized that there is an ancient abbey on the tiny little Scottish island of Iona, which was very much in ruins. And he thought, well, how about we bring together church folk? And initially it was mainly ministers and trainee ministers, and the men locally in Govan who, because of the economic depression, had been laid off work and had nothing to do, but were obviously very skilled craftsmen, bring together these guys for a few months over the summer to literally rebuild this ancient abbey. I mean, it was just quite an extraordinary idea, and I still can't fully get my head around it. But I mean, right from the start, that building community was bringing together friends and strangers, people from very different backgrounds who would not necessarily ever have the opportunity to really get to know each other, and bring them together to do what we call a demanding common task. And the demanding common task wasn't only literally rebuilding this abbey, but it was about living and working together. The skilled craftsmen, shipbuilders and others who were used to some extent being the labourers, they became the bosses, and the ministers and trainee ministers and other church folk were the labourers. So that immediately was a whoa moment, I think, for all of them. But on Iona, and they came just for 3 or 4 months in the year. They would work together, they would eat together, they would worship together, and no doubt have some rowdy conversations and hopefully some laughter together as well. And that was the beginning of the Iona community. And this Church of Scotland minister, George MacLeod, had, I don't think, any sense of the community as it now is, this dispersed ecumenical community. But when the guys went back home to the mainland after their time on Iona, they realized, but we've begun to get to know these people. We want to keep in touch with them. And that was the beginnings of how the Iona community evolved. So on the mainland, they began kind of meeting. I'm not quite sure how often it was right at the beginning, but certainly now and for many years, members of the community have met every month in their local family groups, as we call them. We are, as well as being, well, I mean, everybody says, of course, we're a welcoming community, and the intention certainly is there. And as time has evolved, we've become much more intentionally welcoming of people who are different in different ways. And that, of course, is one of the joys and challenges of community, is living with diversity as well, in every possible way, living with disagreements. And folk, I mean, one of the more recent intentionalities in terms of welcoming people, and particularly on Iona, and I'll come back to Iona in a minute, is recognizing people who are non-binary and transgender, and being very openly welcoming of that. Now, that doesn't sit easily with everyone, and we recognize that as well. But we know also that has made a huge difference, not only to members and folk on Iona, including guests, but to us. I mean, we all learn from each other, however challenging and difficult that can be. In terms of being a member, that is an intentional commitment, and we follow a rule, which is based on the Benedictine rule, because this was a Benedictine monastery. And there are 4 parts that we commit to at the moment, which is daily prayer, worship, and regular engagement with the Bible and other sources of nourishment, working for justice, peace, and the integrity of creation, supporting one another in our prayers, in our meeting together, and also accounting to each other for how we keep the rule and use our gifts of time and money and the earth's resources, and sharing in the corporate life of the wider community. So it is a commitment, and we members, in our accounting every year, we then recommit. We make an intentional recommitment every year. So it's not just, it's not, oh, you're in and it's for life, as it were. And that's a very important time of discernment, year on year. And we have members who live all over the mainland of Britain, and also in continental Europe, and over in the United States and Canada, and 1 or 2 in Australia, and a very new one in New Zealand. And then we also have associate members who commit to the rule but are not accountable to each other for it, all over the world. There's a good 2,000 plus at the moment, which is really exciting. On Iona, we have what we call a resident group, mixture of staff and volunteers. And together we live and work here. Our demanding common task is living in community. So we're working together, we're literally living together. I mean, our whole life virtually while we're here is with the same people that you do not choose. When you sign up, you've no idea who your fellow community members are going to be here, resident group members. And that can be, that has its challenges, but it also has its huge joys. And having come back today, having been away for 10 days, and thinking, oh my goodness, the weather's getting colder and it's actually pouring with rain, I can hear. And volunteers are leaving us, and we're about to overwinter together. Do I really want to be here? And then we happened to have a meeting of the resident staff group this afternoon after I got back. And I sat there thinking, yes, I really do want to be here. That it was just amazing. We were talking about very practical things, but it is such a privilege and a joy working together with people very much in community. I mean, yes, some of us have more responsibilities work-wise than others, but we treat each other as in as flat a way as possible and listen to each other and all share ideas and take them on and so on. And I mean, that is just fabulous. So in terms of our living and building and rebuilding community every week, we welcome guests each week to rebuild community with us. Now, guests will come and there will quite often be a theme. Maureen was saying, I think before everybody was here, that last year we had an interfaith week and members of the religious forum in Scotland and some university chaplains and some local interfaith groups came. And it was a fantastic week. And we eat together, we worship together. Guests also have task teams. So we invite our guests to clean toilets and chop vegetables and mop floors just for half an hour every day, which is again that demanding common task, but is a great way to interact and get to know people. And then there's program for guests as well. And just for whatever reason, I'm quite new in this role. I don't know why we didn't have an interfaith week as such this year. We are having one next year, so please look on our website and think about coming. But 3 weeks ago, we kind of unexpectedly, in the sense that they booked in themselves a group from Bradford, 4 of whom had been last year, and it was 12, I think, this year. And I mean, I didn't do an exact count, but I think about 8 of them were Muslim and 4 Christian. And as I say, it wasn't specifically an interfaith week or anything, but they were just so full of energy. And as well as eating together, they actually made one of our evening meals for us, which of course was absolutely delicious. And every week, one of the evening services we have is what we call an agape meal. So rather than, I shouldn't say it like that, but it's it's slightly different from Holy Communion, but we sit around a table and share a biscuit and a glass of water all together and share stories. And both at, I think, the Interfaith Week and another week we had earlier in the year when we had a Palestinian Christian, a Palestinian Muslim, and a Jew from England. They read from their own scriptures, and that is, every time that happens, I just feel this, we are one, basically. We may not agree with each other on everything, but there was such a powerful moment again. And hearing stories from these folk in Bradford who are all very community orientated and do quite extraordinary work. And we also offered, and they accepted the invitation for a small meeting room that we have, that they used every morning as a prayer space. It's a prayer room. So that was, as I'm very keen to welcome people of all faiths and none. And part of that is obviously getting to know how we can actually make everyone feel welcome. And if it's a need of a prayer space, obviously diet and food comes into it as well. And there may be other things, then we want to do that as far as we are able. So that is different ways that we build community, and there is so much to learn from in the world as we are living in it just now. That is so much what we need. I'm absolutely convinced about that, as I'm sure we all are. Community means different things to different people, and there are different shapes and sizes of community too, and that's good. But I think the more that we interact and engage with and hear things that we may feel uncomfortable with, but keep the conversations going, and don't just say, oh no, sorry, not there.